Sunday, the 30th of March 2025. I have been a bit busy of late, and indeed, I got one text to know if it was all right. There was no video. I think I have to get a balance between the amount of videos I upload. When you consider anyone following me, they'll have to sit down, and if they give me 40 minutes of their day looking at my videos, it's a lot to expect, but that'd be about right in my opinion. And then I try to leave videos that are not on a specialist subject that people are not interested in, that they don't bother looking at them. And that should give them a bit more time, because there are other things to be done. Now, this is about vintage and engineering, model engineering, and all of those things, which are things very close to my heart and very close to the heart of many of my friends. And even if you think of the men's shed, isn't that kind of the idea, that people share their knowledge? There are men's sheds. Some of them became very politically grabbed. In other words, the local politicians grabbed the money in them, and I don't know, is that a good idea? Anyway, we'll not go there. Like, there's a good few publication books, but to show you some of the stuff I'm reading, like over 25-30 years, using the Small Lathe by L.C. Mason. Nice read in it. Metals for the Engineering Craftsman. Another nice little book. Has it an author? I don't know, but it shows you the spark test, and I must do that with you, how to identify the type of steel by the spark test. We'll do that sometime I get time. Now, so that's Metals for the Engineering Craftsman. That's about €11, not that dear. The Art of Welding. Model globe plug engines. Well, we all aspire to building these, but you see, when you have your aim to build some of these, it's a very healthy frame of mind. Pity that, as John Lennon said, your dreams are what you have before life gets in the way. Foundry work for the amateur. Shaping machines. I bought a shaping machine one time, and the business went bust before I brought it home. I dragged my feet. You need to bring it home if you buy something. But anyway, it's gone. I have another little one now, a little hand one. So this is Babbit metal. Now, up until the invention of Babbit metal in 1839, bearings were either brass, which is not a particularly good substance. Brass does not absorb small particles that may break off the shaft or may be in the environment. Although I have used it a lot for sliding surfaces. I made a press one time for pressing in small objects, and I used brass. But when there's not a lot of friction, or not a lot of up and down or revolving, it's okay. It'll work good enough. The other one is bronze, and bronze would be what you'd have in the old threshing mills long ago, and any old shafts, indeed steam engines. Bronze is an alloy of copper with a little tin in it, and it works reasonably well for bearings, and is still used, and is in a good deal of dynamos, and is actually in some alternators, new models of it. But in 1839, and sure, it took a while for it to creep in, Isaac Babbit discovered a metal, and it contained tin, a lot of tin. I think about 75% tin. It varies a bit. Antimony. Antimony is a metal which has the effect of hardening softer metals. So, for example, they put antimony in lead for ammunition, because it hardens the lead, particularly the shot. Like for, we'll say, Olympic, say, pigeon shooting, they'd want the lead, the same characteristics and weight, but they want it harder, and they use antimony in it. It's a scarce enough metal, and only a little of it is needed. The other product of it is copper, but it was the exact composition of the Babbit metal that made it so successful. And there were a lot of tests done, and finally they came up with the exact right mix. And it could be poured into the housing, and then it could be machined on a lathe to get it exact. So it was a big improvement. Now, the big thing you'll know is the journals of engines, of modern diesel and petrol engines, and all the bearing materials inside the engine. And they have the feature that the oil is pumped in through the centre and comes out in the centre of the bearing. So when an engine is running properly, there's no contact. The oil is under pressure and is squirting out of the side of the Babbit metal bearing. Now, they've improved Babbit metals a lot, and nowadays, in fact, it's really superseded by better concoctions. I mean, the modern engine is a marvel. 300,000 miles, whereas 50 years ago you'd be lucky to get maybe 50,000 miles. Not even that, before you'd have to get them done up, redone. But that's what Babbit metal was, and it was a great advance. And they were soft. But the big feature of Babbit metal is that it could absorb little tiny specks of dirt or break or grit. So if we say a little bit of sand got in, the Babbit metal could absorb it so that it didn't score the shaft. Whereas the brass or the bronze, it would be there between the two, and it had scored the shaft. And that included little tiny specks of steel or cast iron. So that was the great thing about Babbit metal. It could absorb into it the damaging part, and it became sacrificed instead of the shaft. So by changing the Babbit metal, pouring in more or putting in new ones, you got over that problem. Now, shell bearings are an example, and they are a type of white metal. We call them white metal, and in some cases the constitution of them, the makeup of them, is secret. The various manufacturers have them fairly secret, so they mightn't just tell you exactly what's in them. We don't need to know. But generally speaking, a bearing your shaft is generally either cast iron or steel or a type of hardened steel, and the bearing then is a softer material. And they have got that down to an extremely fine art. Now, you might be thinking, oh, sure, roller bearings and ball bearings is the answer to that. You must remember that roller bearings or ball bearings take up a lot of room. So if this is the shaft, there could be a ½ inch each side for the roller bearing race and centre to fit. And then you have the balls as well. If it's a ball bearing or if it's a roller bearing, doesn't matter. So you have whatever it is between it. So you have a lot of space. So you can imagine now in chainsaws they use tiny needle bearings, because in a two-stroke engine you have no oil there. So they have to use roller bearings, and they have that down to a fairly wide art as well. But actually in a car engine like a diesel Volkswagen or a Toyota or whatever, or a Nissan, they don't need this patent of the soft metal inside and inside between the main part and the shaft as a bearing surface with oil pumped out is the last word in a bearing. It's the last word in a bearing, because ball bearings don't last forever. They last quite a while. So, okay, I think that's enough on that, on about 8 minutes on the various types of metal. Isaac Babbit came up with it. It would have been invented anyway, no doubt. But I have an old threshing mill, an old horse-driven threshing drum here, and it looks to be bronze that's in the bearing. It's a browny, yellowy substance when you shine it up with a bit of brass, and it seems to be that. So it all depends on the use the bearing was put to. And as engines got more powerful and more durable, they had to come up with better ways of doing it. That's when you hear all this Formula 1 and Formula 2. A lot of that is the advances in technology in the engineering field. Okay, that's Babbit metal. I hope I've covered that fairly good. Now, in a lot of the small lathes, like the Myford Super 7, they used a type of bronze bearing, maybe Babbit in some cases, but modern brass or copper alloys can carry a heavier load. A problem with the Babbit was there was a limit on the load it could carry. If you really put the pressure on it downwards, you might get an oval shape. So that was a bit of a problem. So they have a type of a copper alloy now that can take a bigger load, and then they can add lead to copper, and that appears to be quite a good surface as well. So you have the softness of the lead allied with the copper to act a bit like a Babbit metal. But in the lathes and the machine tools using either bronze or Babbit metal bearings, there's always an oiler on the top. You'll see a brass oiler. You put oil in, it drips in slowly, and then you screw it a bit down to give it a little bit. So as you use your lathe every so often, you just give it a wee turn and you have lubrication coming in. Lubrication is vital for all these type bearings, irrespective of what they are, unless they're sealed roller or taper bearings or needle bearings, in which case sometimes the lubrication is sealed in, and they can do a lot of things that way with modern methods. Anyway, folks, I hope I've explained all that to you. It's really for the vintage. Don't bother looking at it, as I say, unless you're into this vintage. And that's my little piece on Isaac Babbitt's 1839. He came up with it, Babbit metal used in engineering, model engineering and all that sort of stuff. We'll see you back for something soon. 11 minutes. Comment underneath. Bye-bye.